On the line with us is Nicole Hockley. Nicole is the co-founder of Sandy Hook Promise. The sandyhookpromise.org is the website, and her son Dylan was killed at Sandy Hook. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm curious what your thoughts are on what the most effective thing we could be doing in America to stop this slaughter of our children. Is it starting to show the pictures of the violence? Is it ending the law that gives immunity to gun manufacturers, some lawsuits? Is it what is it? Where should we be pushing? How do we bring about change?
Well, sadly, there is no one thing that will solve this because this is a very complex issue. But there's a lot that we can do at a community level, at a legislative level. These include, at a community level, we can do things like teach how to recognize the signs of someone going into crisis and at risk of hurting themselves or someone else, teaching our kids, teaching community members, creating interventions, taking these things seriously. At a policy level, there's a lot of movement we can do on things like extreme risk protection orders or background checks or limits to magazine sizes or even assault weapons bans, although there's not a lot of appetite for that right now. I don't agree with showing violent pictures. I would never, ever want crime scene photos from Sandy Hook shooting to be leaked out in the public. And I think, unfortunately, the normalization of gun violence is so prevalent in America, I don't even think that would change anything. But there's things that we need to do to engage in this conversation fruitfully and push for action.
Yeah, well, it worked with Emmett Till, but I understand your perspective.
Before the internet, though, as well. So.
Yeah, although it was, widely circulated, that, the Jet magazine photo. But every other country in the world, every other developed country in the world has, people who are violent, has people who are under protection order, but they're not experiencing what we're experiencing. It seems that the fact that Canada has 35 guns for every 100 Canadians. We have 120 guns for every 100 Americans. This was not a situation, this was not even a reality in the United States, prior to the Reagan administration, really prior to the 1990s, I believe. I'm sure you know better than me. Isn't just the proliferation of weapons, particularly weapons of war in America, one of the biggest pieces of this?
Without a doubt. We have more guns than we have people in the country, and that access to weaponry, especially high-powered assault-style weapons, that is a significant problem. However, unlike other countries, we have a Second Amendment. They don't. So we can't do anything huge about the number of guns out there. They exist. So rather than continue to debate about, can we just remove all the guns? That's not practical. So instead, let's focus with what we can do. So if you're a firearm owner, keep your gun securely stored. If you have a gun, they are most often used in acts of suicide, in acts of school shooting. These weapons come from within the home. So keep them stored securely, or ensure that only appropriate people that are not in crisis are able to access or purchase firearms. That will help the problem as well. If we just keep focusing on the number of guns, that is a known problem. We are not going to solve that one right now. So let's deal with the guns that we have and figure out how we can work with that.
Yeah, I appreciate the pragmatism of your approach. That said, we did ban these assault weapons and semi-automatic weapons. I mean, after the killing in 1996 in Tasmania, in Australia, pictures of the crime scene leaked and were all over the country. And John Howard, who was more conservative than Ronald Reagan, led the charge to ban all semi-automatic weapons in Australia. And they did a nationwide gun buyback program. They bought back 700,000 guns. They had dozens of mass shootings prior to that. They've had 2 of them in the 27 years since then. Is there no, I think we've all seen the clip of the Republican congressman from Tennessee going, if you think we're going to do something about it, you're wrong. Nothing's going to happen here. Is there no chance of an assault weapons ban at the very least? I mean, you know, hand grenades are arms, right? Under the Second Amendment, and yet we've criminalized them. Fully automatic weapons are arms under the Second Amendment. We've criminalized them. There has to be some place where we can draw lines and start enforcing them.
Oh, I completely agree with that. And I do support assault weapons bans, and I do support restrictions on high capacity magazines. I think that will, these are the weapons that mass shooters are choosing because they do the most carnage in the least amount of time. That is a proven fact when you look at all the data. I just don't know if our political will is there as a country to take that step. So again, focusing on pragmatism, what can we do now? Things like background checks, extremist protection orders, secure storage, those are on the table and are doable, bipartisan legislation that can and will save lives. And then when politicians see that they can pass that and still keep their political careers, if that's what's more important to them, then we can look at things like assault weapons ban. If that's not like, I'm not saying I am against an assault weapons ban. I am just very practical in terms of I know what it's like to lose a child to gun violence, and I want to do all the right things. And by banging my head on the table and demanding things that have no real possibility of passing right now, I'm not being productive. So I need to focus on what we can do and then take the next step after that.
We have had situations in America in the past where industry profits, where industries were literally killing people. You had the tobacco industry that was aggressively killing people. In the 1990s, you had a movement around the tobacco, against the tobacco industry that started showing, for example, pictures of people missing half their jaw. And, we did something about tobacco. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they were presenting graphic images of people, in mangled cars and bloody bodies. And we did something about that. It seems that, we have in the past figured out ways. I'm not suggesting that we should be showing the pictures from Sandy Hook, but there has to be some way to shock the conscience of America if we haven't done it yet. Or am I just, out here howling into the wind?
No, you're not howling into the wind. I think there's a couple of things in what you just said, and movements like Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the Truth Initiative against big tobacco and other social changes.
And the anti-abortion movement did it too. I mean, they run around with pictures of bloody fetuses.
Yep. And that is a way to create behavioral change. They were also backed by programs and legal activity. And there's a lot of levers that you need to pull when you're creating change. And this is what we're doing at Sandy Hook Promise. There's legal arms, there's grassroots arms and voice. The shock tactics, I don't know if our country will be shocked anymore. And, if you're doing a dramatization of something, or if a person is choosing to show these are my bullet wounds, that's one thing. Please do not put that burden on parents or survivors of gun shooting to show their victims. I think we've done enough. It's time for other people to take the charge now.
Yeah, although there is a growing movement among high school kids to ask states to put a checkbox on their driver's license that says, show my body if I'm killed by gun violence.
I have heard about that movement, and if that's what they choose to do, that's their choice.
Right.
But creating that choice for them, and also I don't know. I mean, even I have an 18-year-old right now. My son who survived the Sandy Hook shooting is now 18. I don't know if he would even understand the ramification of what that would do to the rest of his family, that forever, instead of remembering him for the wonderful young man that he is, I would instead be looking at his bullet-riddled body.
Yeah, I get it.
I think it's too much to ask from victims.
I get it. And your point that victims have done enough already, I think, is so well made. Nicole Hockley, the co-founder and CEO of Sandy Hook Promise, whose son Dylan was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School. SandyHookPromise.org is the website. Nicole, thank you so much for dropping by today.
Thank you.
It's great speaking.